They thought they could get away with it, a few cruel laughs, a few punches, and a girl no one would stand up for. But when her mother showed up, calm and silent, the entire school realized too late how broken bar they hadn't just picked on the wrong girl, they had awakened something far worse. Subscribe now, because this story will shake your soul and make you question what real justice looks like. The new girl, Emma, had been at Ridgewood High for barely 2 weeks when the whispers began, the quiet looks, the smirks in the hallway, the notes left on her locker. She was shy, quiet, and her mother, Ava, had just moved them to the small suburban town after Emma's father, a decorated Army colonel, was killed in a roadside bombing overseas. Emma never talked about it, but grief had carved deep shadows beneath her gentle green eyes. She tried to blend in, to hide in her books, but in Ridgewood, the quiet ones were always prey. The bullies, led by Brianna, the principal's daughter, and her two loyal shadows, Madison and Chloe, saw her silence as weakness. They laughed at her thrift store clothes, her stutter when she was nervous, her habit of eating lunch alone. Teachers looked away. Students scrolled their phones. No one noticed how close she was to breaking. It happened one cold Friday afternoon after school. The parking lot was nearly empty when Brianna and her friends cornered Emma behind the gym. There was no one around to hear the first slap, or the second. They shoved her, kicked her, spat cruel words. When Emma fell and didn't get up, Brianna smirked and said, "Maybe next time you'll learn to stay invisible." They left her there, bruised, bleeding, half-conscious, as rain began to fall. By the time Ava arrived at the hospital, the doctors were whispering words no mother should ever hear: broken ribs, a concussion, a ruptured spleen. Her daughter had been beaten half to death. For a long moment, Ava just stood there, staring through the glass at Emma's pale face, her hair matted with blood. Then something inside her went cold. People remembered Ava from years ago, a military intelligence officer who vanished after her husband's death. No one knew she'd spent years working in shadow operations overseas. No one knew she'd seen what cruelty does when it goes unchecked. That night, she sat by Emma's bed, holding her hand, whispering, "Sleep, baby, Mom is here now." The next morning, Ridgewood High woke up to chaos. At first, it was small, and the school's main website suddenly displayed a video feed of the hallway outside Brianna's locker, looping footage of her shoving Emma, mocking her, laughing with her friends. Then more clips appeared: Madison's voice calling Emma a charity case, Chloe dumping her lunch on the floor. By noon, the entire school was buzzing. Teachers tried to shut it down, but the files kept spreading onto student phones, local social media pages, even the school district's internal network. Parents flooded the office demanding answers. The principal, Mr. Carson, called an emergency meeting, but before it could begin, every projector in the school turned on, displaying a message in red letters: "Do you protect your bullies?" Panic rippled through the halls. No one knew who was behind it, but Ava did. She'd hacked the system overnight, using skills she hadn't touched in years. And she wasn't done. That evening, she walked into the school board meeting uninvited, calm in a black coat, her presence quiet but electric. "My daughter," she said softly, setting a stack of printed evidence on the table, "was nearly killed on your property, and you all did nothing." The board members stammered excuses, but Ava's tone never roused. "You think this ends with apologies? It ends when every single person who failed her faces the truth publicly." Within hours, she'd uploaded a file titled "The Ridgewood Cover-Up" to the internet, exposing not only the bullying but years of ignored complaints, favoritism, and corruption within the school's administration. Teachers who looked away. Security cameras accidentally turned off. Reports that never reached the district office. By dawn, news crews were outside the school. Brianna's father, Principal Carson, tried to frame Ava as unstable, a grieving mother gone too far. But that morning, as he gave a press conference, an email pinged his inbox, a message from an anonymous source with a single line: "You should check your daughter's phone." Minutes later, the live broadcast captured him reading through messages that made his face go pale. Texts where Brianna and her friends joked about what they did to Emma, even bragged that their parents would protect them. The media storm was instant. The girls were suspended, their families dragged into public disgrace. But that wasn't the end. Days later, while Ava sat quietly beside Emma's hospital bed, Emma's fingers twitched, her eyes opened, her first words were a whisper. "Mama broken bar," they laughed. Ava's eyes filled with tears. "I know, sweetheart, but they're not laughing now." What came next turned the story from tragedy to legend. When Emma was strong enough to return to school weeks later, she walked through the same hallways that once echoed with whispers. The same students who'd ignored her now parted in silence. The same teachers who'd looked away now lowered their eyes. But she didn't walk alone. Ava walked beside her, a calm storm in human form. And when Principal Carson tried to confront her, "You can't just waltz in here like you own the place," she handed him a letter from the district superintendent. He was fired. Effective immediately, the school descended into silence. Emma transferred out soon after, but her story spread far beyond Ridgewood. People started calling Ava the Mother Lion, a name that went viral online, a symbol of what happens when silence meets justice. But beneath that storm of media noise was something deeper. A week after moving to a new town, Ava received a letter in the mail and no return address. Inside was a note: "You made them pay, but how far would you go if it wasn't just your daughter?" There was also a photo, a grainy image of Emma sitting in her new school cafeteria, taken that very day. Ava froze. Someone was watching them, someone who knew what she'd done. She looked around the quiet house, then locked the doors and whispered, "Let them come." Because she wasn't just a mother anymore, she'd become something the world should fear. A woman with nothing left to lose. But what no one knew was that behind the chaos she unleashed at Ridgewood, there was a reason she'd been so prepared, so precise. The FBI had once recruited her for cyber warfare operations, and her husband's accident overseas wasn't an accident at all. His death had been tied to a classified mission, and one of the people behind that mission, the same school board official who'd tried to bury Emma's case. Ridgewood wasn't just bad luck, it was the town Ava had been searching for. The school's corruption, the bullies, the cowardice, all of it had led her to uncover something much darker, a local network tied to the very men who'd betrayed her husband. When she brought the school to its knees, she'd also cracked open a file system that connected directly to a defense contractor known for manipulating government data. Emma's beating wasn't just a spark of cruelty, it was the chain reaction Ava needed to expose everything. In the final act of her revenge, Ava didn't disappear, she went public. Standing in front of a sea of cameras, she told the world, "You call me dangerous for fighting back, but tell me, what do you call a system that lets children bleed before it listens?" The clip went viral, gaining millions of views overnight. People called her a hero, others called her reckless, but deep down, every parent who watched it felt the same chill, the fear and love that only a mother could turn into war. Months later, Ava and Emma started fresh in another town under new names. But sometimes, when Emma walked home from her new school, she'd see a black car parked a few blocks away, engine idling, windows tinted. And every time, Ava would step outside, her hand never far from the small silver device she kept in her pocket, a reminder that peace, for them, was just another kind of battlefield.